Hey guys, I want to give you a real quick walkthrough about what we're going to be covering in class this week. We're going to be talking all about type, different ways of using type in Illustrator, and different things that you can do with type. This is a file that we'll be working from, and I'm just going to go through this real quick, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. 3 different types of type in Illustrator. There's point type. That is type where you click and you begin typing. That type will not drop down a line until you press return, make a hard return. That type is also manipulatable with your selection tool, and you can click and drag that and change the size of the type and whatnot, and you can even distort it as well. The second type of type is area type, and in Illustrator you can do this by clicking and dragging to create a text box. And in Illustrator CC, by default, that fills with lorem ipsum or dummy text, and then you can begin typing. And as you reach the edge of your type box or text area, you'll see that that text automatically wraps down to the next line. You can also use shapes to create area text boxes as well. So like with this right here, if I take this type and I copy it on a Mac, Command C, and I go click on my text tool, if I hover over the edge of that path and click and then paste that, that's going to paste that text into that particular text box. Typing on a path is a way that you can take your text and you can create a path for that, and you can click on that path, and then you can begin to text, or you can begin to type whatever it is that you wanted to type. And I'm just going to turn this font up just a little bit. There are 3 areas of this that you need to know. This area right here is called the import. This is where your text is going to come in or start, and you can manipulate that by dragging that import spot along your path. Your output over here is the area where that text is going to be visible to. So as I begin to drag this in, it makes that text not visible within that area. And then the center is also where you can control this as well. With our type tool selected, by default, if we click on a closed path or a shape, it's going to convert that into an area text box. If we want to take text and wrap it around this path, then we can hold down our Option key and we can click on this path, and then it wraps this text. Is great. And then using our import, our output, or our center, we can manipulate where this text is. We can drag it along the outside of the path or along the inside of the path. You can also go over here and double click on your text tool. It gives you the ability to go through and flip this and align it to different areas, like the ascender. And then you can go in and you can manipulate where that text is going to be placed and whatnot, and you can do all kind of different stuff with it. So next we're going to talk about leading, and all of these things that we're going to look at in this this next section are going to be available to you in your character panel over in this area. Things like leading, which is the space between your lines of type, your tracking and your kerning. So your tracking is going to be the space between words or sentences, and then your kerning is going to be the space in between individual letters. I want to go in and show you how you can control these basically with shortcut keys. So with your text box selected, your area text box selected, you can hold down Option and you can use your up and down arrow keys to increase the leading of a body of text. So if you need to add more leading, you can press down. If you need to add less leading, you can press up. With tracking, you can do the same thing. You can highlight areas of text. So if I wanted to move this word up a line, I can go in and I can highlight this area, and holding down Option and pressing the left arrow, I'm decreasing the amount of tracking that I have in this selection. Kerning, the way that you do that, you use the same shortcut key as you do with tracking, Option and your left and right arrows, but you have to have your cursor in between the letters that you're wanting to either add more space to or take space away. So you can use your arrow keys to move your cursor around, and then hold down Option and press those same arrow keys to go in and tighten that spacing up. Vertical and horizontal, scale, baseline shift, and type effects, we're going to get into these as well. This is the section down here where you can go in and you can manipulate the vertical or horizontal scale by going in and manipulating this type. You can also make changes to specific letters. Maybe I'm wanting to do something like change the font size of this one and then raise its baseline, so I can change the baseline of this particular letter. And I can even use my arrow keys to do that, and I can even hold down Shift and my up and down arrow keys to move that, change that in larger increments. You can even rotate letters as a whole or letters individually just by highlighting them and then setting it to whatever angle or whatever degree it is that you want to rotate it. Next section is we're gonna talk about paragraph alignment and indentation, and this is all located in the paragraph panel. You can see that we have align left or either ragged right. We have align center, align right or ragged left, and then we have all of our justifications. This is a really cool section down here because you can add things to new paragraphs. So every time that there is a new paragraph, you can add indentation to that paragraph. You can also add space before or after new paragraphs, so that way when I'm going in and I'm typing and I drop down a line, I begin typing, it's going to add that space. So every time I hit return, it's going to add this amount of space, and then it's going to indent it this amount of space. This next section is a really important section. If you ever see a text box, an area text box, and you see this red square with this little plus sign, that means that there's more text that you can't see. If you're ever working and you need to be able to move text from one text box to another, you really need to be working with threading text or threaded text. And the way that we can do this is with our selection tool. We can click on this little red box, and if I wanted to create another text box the exact same dimensions as this one, I can just move my cursor to where I want that to be, and I click once, and I see that the text continues to this text box. And if I see it again, I can click this and add another one, click this, and if I don't want it to be the same, then I can go in and I can draw a text box just by clicking and dragging that out, and I can see that that text continues. The beauty of this is if I ever needed to add text into it, it would just continue to flow to that next text box. So threading text and working with threaded text is a really cool thing to use, especially when you're working with large bodies of text across a lot of different columns. You can also do this exact same thing with shapes. If I wanted to take these shapes and convert them into area text boxes, there's an easy way to do that. I make a selection of it. I can go up to type. I can go down to threaded text, and I can go to create. And what that's going to do is that's going to convert those shapes into area text boxes that are already threaded to each other. So I can just go grab my text tool. I can place my cursor inside that first one, Command V, and it's going to paste that text into it, and it's going to paste it across all of those text boxes. Now when you're working with a text wrap, if I wanted to take this text and I wanted to wrap it around this circle, there's an easy way to do it, but you also have to make sure that you follow a couple of rules. First rule is that your shape has to be on a sublayer above your text. Now the way that you create a text wrap is you have to apply the text wrap to the shape. So we're going to go up to Object with the shape selected. We're going to go down to Text Wrap, and we're going to go to Make. You'll see this little buffer pop up. And when you do that, you'll see this little buffer pop up. We can go back, and if we need to increase that buffer, we can go in and we can go back to Object Text Wrap Options, and you can increase the size or the distance between where the text is going to be able to enter into this area. Now this is not going to work until this shape is actually on top, is on a sublayer above my text. So I'm going to use my shortcut key to navigate or arrange this, Command and my right bracket, and then as I move this around, I see that that text is going to wrap around that shape. Next thing we want to take a look at is how we can take editable text and convert it into an outline or convert it into a shape. There's an easy way to do it. It's up under the Type menu, Create Outlines. I encourage you to use the shortcut keys for these functions, which is on a Mac is Shift-Command-O. Shift-Command-O is going to convert this text into an object. That object is going to have anchor points, and those anchor points, just like with any other shape with anchor points, can be manipulated. You can even select this and ungroup it, Object Ungroup, or either Shift-Command-G, and these become individual shapes where you can then begin to manipulate even further. There are a lot of ways that we can warp objects. You can also warp text. We can go up to the Object, Envelope Distort, and then these are your three different types of warps, or three different types of distortions. You can make it with a warp, you can make it with a mesh, you can make it with a top object, but these two, make with warp, is a quick way to style your text if you need to use an arc, if you need to use an upper or a lower arc, and then you can manipulate this just by going through and changing the bend. You can also manipulate the horizontal and vertical distortions, and you can go through and you can choose whichever one of these that you want to work with. Now once that's been made, this is still editable text, and you'll see up here in the options, your option bar up here, that you can manipulate the or you can edit the envelope up here along this line. So if I wanted to change this in any way, I could do that, but I can also go in and I can edit the content. So as long as this is still editable text, and let's say that I wanted to take, you know, a letter out or add a letter, you can go in and manipulate that, and it's still gonna have that same distortion applied to it. When you no longer want this to be editable text, then you can go in and you can go to Object and you can expand that, and what that will do is that will make it a shape.